Board of Education meeting. I'm Eric Davis, Chair of the Board, and I call this meeting to order. Delighted to welcome all board members and advisors, staff, on-site visitors, online listeners, and Twitter followers. And remember, you can follow the North Carolina State Board of Education on Twitter at EDStateBoard_NC. I remind the audience and those listening that this body meets monthly with its official meeting scheduled for the first Thursday of the month. Discussion of agenda items are typically held on Wednesday prior to the official meeting day. And I remind our on-site visitors and online listeners, you can also follow us online by going to SBE meetings at www.ncpublicschools.org. Today, again, we're delighted to have some of our local superintendents who are the frontline leaders in delivering education to our students. We're particularly pleased to have Superintendent Linda Carr from Washington County and Superintendent Jeff Booker from Gaston County. Could you stand so we could recognize you? Thanks so much to you and all of our superintendents across the state of North Carolina. Board members, you're reminded that it's our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. If during the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. This time I call on Ms. Jill Kamnitz to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Kamnitz. We now come to our special recognitions, a time on our agenda when we recognize significant awards, proclamations, and resolutions for those who make a significant difference in the lives of our public school students we serve each day. We'll begin with the acknowledgement of our new State Board of Education student advisor, Lily Seymour, and then we'll move to recognizing the North Carolina Virtual Public Schools, who recently received a national recognition, and then finally school recognitions for the National Blue Ribbon Schools and National Schools of Character. This time I'll turn to Dr. Petrie Martin. Dr. Petrie Martin.
Good morning to our chair, our vice chair, our superintendent, our board members, advisors, and all those assembled. It is an honor today to bring to you our new student advisor for the State Board of Education in North Carolina, Lily Seymour. Lily is from Haywood County Schools, and specifically, she is a student at Haywood County Early College. She has already started to provide significant work across the state of North Carolina through her work with the Portrait of a Graduate Committee. She was here in October when the Portrait of a Graduate was finalized and shared her thoughts regarding the work of the Portrait of a Graduate and its implementation. She is a community member who cares about her community and is diligent in working within her community. And her teachers and fellow students are always saying what a huge asset she is to her school and to her community. We know that she is going to also contribute in this role today, and we look forward to hearing her feedback and her guidance. I would like to introduce to you all the new student advisor for the State Board of Education, Ms. Lily Seymour.
Vice Chair Duncan, if I could ask him to
Always Vice Chair Duncan.
You know what's on my back. And we all Yep. That was great. And 1, 2, and 3. One more. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you. Well, let's see, hold on. Are we taking a picture with the Mercury Public Schools?
Yeah, there'll be a series of pictures.
Chair says yes.
Yeah.
That's my ag teacher. That's my ag teacher. She was my ag teacher. I'm here because I just wanted you to know. Donna, first of all, you could.
I remember what sounds like that before.
Good morning, y'all. Superintendent Truett, Chair Davis, and the board. We are pleased to recognize our North Carolina Virtual Public School as they have been honored with the Quality Matters Making a Difference for Students Award. Recipients demonstrate a commitment to ensuring high course quality using different but valuable approaches to improving outcomes for students. Quality Matters is an internationally recognized standards-based program offering faculty quality assurance in online and hybrid course design with a focus on continuous improvement. NCVPS began applying Quality Matters standards in 2015 because of the organization's international recognition, comprehensive general standards, and specific standards and structure that focuses on criteria such as alignment, learner interaction, and accessibility. To date, NCVPS has certified 81 courses, more than 72% of its base catalog of digital learning options. The organization has the most certified courses for any K-12 institution in the nation. I'll say that again, in the nation. Quality Matters noted that NCVP has demonstrated exceptional dedication to quality in digital learning and that the organization's noteworthy commitment to improving learner outcomes includes the use of course review tools, professional development, and QM's research-supported standards to build quality assurance processes. Please join me in congratulating the NCVPS staff on the accomplishment and recognition.
So let's have everybody move down. I think that's what we're doing anyway.
Chair and vice chair.
We all have to come forward just a little bit, yes? I'm sorry. It's not all right. You do not see me shedding tears. And 1, 2, and 3, and one more, and 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, it's over.
That's my teacher.
Your teacher. Oh, my goodness. Even more.
Look at some of those stories about him.
Okay, that one goes there.
Miss Judy. I did.
We're talking about you.
Feels good to be done.
Good morning. I'm honored to recognize North Carolina's 5 public schools who were awarded the prestigious 2022 National Blue Ribbon Award. The schools we will celebrate today are among the 297 schools nationwide to receive the honor this year, which recognizes overall academic performance or progress in closing achievement gaps. The coveted National Blue Ribbon Schools Award affirms and validates the hard work of educators, families, and communities in striving for and attaining exemplary achievement. With its 39th cohort, the National Blue Ribbon Schools program has bestowed approximately 10,000 awards. In North Carolina, a total of 172 schools have been recognized as Blue Ribbon schools since the program's inception in 1982. All schools are honored in one of 2 performance categories based on all student scores, subgroup student scores, and graduation rates. Exemplary high-performing schools are among the state's highest-performing schools as measured by state assessments or nationally normed tests. Exemplary achievement gap closing schools are among the state's highest-performing schools in closing achievement gaps between a school's subgroups and all students over the past 5 years. This year, North Carolina's 5 recipients were honored as exemplary high-performing schools. These schools were recognized and celebrated at the national ceremony in Washington, D.C. on November 3rd and 4th of this year. I also want to thank and recognize our colleagues in the Office of Accountability and Testing for their partnership with this nomination process. As I recognize each awardee, the school and district leaders who are present will stand. East Robeson Primary School, Public Schools of Robeson County, Superintendent Dr. Freddie Williamson, Principal Dr. Lewis Cox. 71st Classical Middle School, Cumberland County Schools, Superintendent Dr. Marvin Connolly Jr., Principal Dr. Quisha Tillman. Southeastern Academy Charter School, Principal Ms. Kristen Stone. W.A. Best Elementary School, Gaston County Schools, Superintendent Dr. Jeffrey Booker, Principal Ms. Laura Clark. Weatherstone Elementary School, Wake County Schools, Superintendent Ms. Caddy Moore, Principal Mr. Tim Chatwick. Please join me in congratulating.
To the back row, if I could have you come up just a little bit, yeah. Will you stay right here? Yep. Yep, there we go. Yeah, where? You're perfect.
We do that.
This way, if you could come over just a little bit, yep, there we go. Awesome, terrific. And 1, 2, 3, one more, 1, 2. That's great. And 1, 2, and 3, one more, and 1, 2, and 3.
Congratulations.
And 1, 2, and 3, one more, 1, 2, and 3.
And this is a very special guest here, Aunt Stacy Wilson Norman, from Cumberland County. Congratulations.
And 1, 2, and 3, one more, 1, 2, 3.
Usually this is the hall. Well, I mean, we need to take care of your.
Good morning. My name is Justin Burgess, and I am the state coordinator for character education in North Carolina. It is my honor to be here today to recognize our 2 schools in North Carolina who have earned state and national recognition for being a school of character in North Carolina. And before I introduce our 2 schools, I just want to emphasize the importance of character education and character development in student academic performance, but also in helping to improve the climate and culture in our schools in North Carolina. I tell school leaders all the time that, yes, it is our job to prepare students to become college and career ready. But what we all know, and we can be guaranteed, is that all of our students in North Carolina are going to be citizens in our society. And it is our job in schools to teach students how to become caring, empathetic, loving citizens who know how to be responsible citizens in our society. And so I just want to emphasize the importance of character development on that important work to prepare students not only to be smart citizens, but kind and caring citizens in our society. And these 2 schools that we're going to recognize today have done just that important work. And so without further ado, I want to bring Sumner Elementary forward, if you guys will come here. Sumner Elementary is represented by Principal Tiffany Hinton and Assistant Principal Shalina Chavis and 2nd grade teacher Ashley Witten. And when I was talking to the school, I asked them to provide a brief statement about the impact of character education. And they said the implementation of the 11 principles of character has informed school improvement that we have discovered character drives academic achievement. We understand that before academics, we must instill positive character into our students for them to be successful lifelong learners. We believe that providing students with a positive learning environment embedded with opportunities to engage in character development is the foundation for students adopting a love for coming to school every day at Sumner Elementary. So congratulations to Sumner Elementary as a state school of character. And if you want to go forward and get your picture taken.
Perfect. Looking good. And 1, 2, 3, one more, and 1, 2, and 3. Thank you. Thank you.
And if I could have Person Early College for Innovation and Leadership come and stand, and I'll talk a little bit about them. Person Early College is represented by their wonderful principal, Ms. Ronna Johnson, social studies and character coach, Mr. Steve Donovan, Ms. Judy Bradshaw, who's the executive director for CTE of Person County Schools, and their assistant superintendent, Dr. Ron Anthony. And when talking with Ms. Johnson, the principal, about character education and the impact that it's had on her school, she said, character education has had a big impact on our entire school climate. The 11 Principles of Character framework has been an excellent resource for us to evaluate our school's culture and climate as a part of our continuous improvement for our students. We've been intentional in the relationships we've built with our students, with each other, and our stakeholders. We believe that we are teaching our students the traits necessary for success in not only school, but in life. Being a responsible citizen, being a team player in the workplace, and helping them to develop empathy and compassion for the plights of others, and know that they can take moral action. That's all why character education is important to our school. Our school is not a perfect place, but we are growing and learning together because we're placing an emphasis on character education. And I can tell you that while this award means a lot to Ms. Johnson and this school, it's about the improvement that she's seen in her students and the climate and culture. We've been working together for over 3 years now, and it's the continuous improvement and the journey, as we call it. So congratulations to Person Early College.
Mr. Chair, I am just wondering, given recent conversations about school performance grades and the availability to access data, I would find it very interesting if we could possibly gather some information from these two schools which have been highlighted today to find out whether their implementation of a strong character program has impacted its dropout rates, its discipline referrals, its suspension rates. I have be very interested to see if there's a correlation in that data in the implementation of that character program and student behaviors that sometimes result in suspensions and, so on and so forth. If we could,
I think that's a wonderful idea. Superintendent, I don't know if your OLR team's, but we'll leave it to your discretion as to what's the best way to
Yeah,
respond
so-
to that. I think the whole board would be interested.
So the team will, as we say in North Carolina, get up with the schools that have been honored, and we will put something together.
Great idea.
thank you.
And we just want to add our congratulations to all of the schools who this morning shined the light on the excellent work occurring every day across every school in North Carolina. And what a great group of schools. Virtual public schools, elementary schools, middle, high, across early college, across the board. You've reminded us of the excellent work that occurs in North Carolina every day, and we celebrate with you. And for that, let's take a 15-minute break so we can speak more individually to those recipients who just made our day. Thanks so much. We're on a 15-minute break. back in session, and our next item is the state superintendent's report, and for that, I'll turn to Superintendent Truitt.
Thank you so much, Chair Davis. It's wonderful to be with all of you here today. As those on the board may recall, at our last board meeting, which was a one-day meeting because of our planning and work session, I opted to forego my report, so you're gonna get a double dose today. So buckle up. It's gonna be a few minutes. So let's move on, please, Maria. Thank you. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit more in depth this morning about the Porch River graduate. You heard Christy Van Auken talk a little bit yesterday, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a deeper dive, starting with the why. For those of you who recall, back in 2016, we, as a nation, received some sobering data from the Georgetown University and the Lumina Foundation, which talked about workforce needs in education in our country. And we were given state-specific data and learned that North Carolina needed to have 67% of its workforce, adult workforce, with some kind of workforce credential. And that we were currently, as a state at that time, at about 54% of our population having training and education beyond high school. And that eventually created the legislatively mandated My Future NC. The chair and I both sit on that board. And My Future NC partnered with Carolina Demography to really do a deep dive as best they could into where we are as a state with providing training and education beyond high school to our students, as well as where the leaks in the pipeline are. Where is it that students are not completing? Looking at not just our high school graduation rate, but also what are our students doing between the ages of 18 to 24. And what this data revealed is that only about 23% of our students in North Carolina go on after high school and attain a 4-year degree by the time they are 24. So that being said, what is happening to the rest of those students? And what that data also shared was that about a third were getting any kind of credential of workforce value by the time they are 24, which that also includes a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree or a truck driving license or a welding license. Now, it's difficult to count credentials, and so we need to take some of that data with a grain of salt. But thanks to a new partnership, first ever partnership that our state has with the National Student Clearinghouse, we have recently been able to provide all of our local superintendents and their leaders with data that shows what's happening to their students after high school. But we are continuing to work alongside My Future NC to do the best job we can at counting credentials. And one priority of my team and me is to make sure that the credentials that our schools are offering are aligned with need in our state. And so what I can report is that last year, the department certified over 40,000 credentials across students in our state. And so around the same time that that Trey Michaels and our CTE director and Christy as workforce engagement advisor and I were kind of looking at the state of things with credentialing in North Carolina. We heard a presentation by a nonprofit called America Succeeds, which is an advocacy group in education in our country, and they coined the phrase durable skills, which you've heard a lot of us talk about quite frequently. And durable skills is a replacement for the phrase soft skills. So we've been hearing for a long time that employers often don't find that their new employees have the soft skills that they wish that their employees had. And so this shift in referring to these skills as durable skills is something that we're seeing all over the country. And if you could go back one slide, please, Marion. What we know is that employers are seeking durable skills almost 4 times more frequently than technical or hard skills. And that the need for students to develop these skills alongside academic and technical skills has always been important. But again, coming out of the pandemic where we saw a really big shift in workforce that we're still seeing the ripple effects of, it's become even more important. So America Succeeds has done this research, and they drilled down state by state. So we'll go on to the next slide. And what we can see is that in North Carolina, we've got 2.2 million job postings from the past 2 years that were studied across 22 occupations, 20 industries, and over 45,000 companies. And 77% of those job postings required at least one durable skill. And board members, all of this is linked in your materials if you want to learn more. And so this is one of the reasons that we set out to develop the statewide Portrait of a Graduate. This is not a new idea. Lots of states have a Portrait of a Graduate that is statewide. North Carolina did not have one that was statewide, but we do have a handful of districts that have their own county-wide or LEA-wide Portrait of a Graduate. And so what we need to do is close the gap between what employers are seeking and what our education system is delivering. And that is the why behind the Portrait of a Graduate. So just a quick reminder about the process. Next slide, please. So we took a region by region approach to this work and ended up with about 1,200 North Carolinians from across the state that included families, higher education partners, employers, faith communities, all kinds of people coming together, including students, and as was mentioned before, Lily Seymour, our new board advisor from Haywood County, was one of those students who participated. And design teams ended up taking 50 different durable skills and whittled them down to 7 durable skills. And so, next slide, please. In October, well, you can see from this slide right here that the competencies or skills that were eventually adopted are adaptability, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, empathy, learner's mindset, and personal responsibility. And so in October, we unveiled the portrait and had just an amazing event here in this room where we had a teacher panel as well that was led by Elizabeth Sandamore, who's one of our regional teachers of the year. And then we also had a student panel. And so you can, these names are not in order, but from left to right, we have Raj, we have Lily, we have Cheyenne, and then me, and then Marcella, who is our senior board advisor, and Micah. And that event was really interesting because we got student perspective, teacher perspective, and principal perspective, and our own Dr. Green was one of those principals who participated. And so I just want to take a second to ask Lily if one of the questions that we asked the students was, if these 7 competencies have been very systematically and deliberately and intentionally interwoven into your education experience, how might your experience have been different? But being at an early college high school, Lily was able to say, well, I did have this experience. And so I've just invited Lily to say a few words about her experience with durable skills at Haywood Early College High School.
Yes, so my experience in my early college is very, uses a lot of these durable skills. Being, like 14 and taking college classes, you have to learn how to learn by yourself, and you have to adapt and talk to your friends because, you might not get something and they will, so you have to collaborate. And you have to have personal responsibility to, I guess one of the biggest things, personal responsibility and communication to speak up and ask questions, I think, is one of the biggest things I take away from Portrait of a Graduate, because I think it's a really important skill to be able to know how to find out new information. So I think my school does a very good job of, and I won't say enforcing, but implementing all of these things. So, yes.
Thank you very much. That's that is amazing to hear, and I love what you said about learning to learn, because one of the criticisms, and we heard this yesterday with Superintendent Kelly Withers commenting about testing. Testing is important. There are, if it weren't for testing and the data collection we do, we would not be disaggregating our testing the way we do to see where those gaps are. However, when we put all of our eggs in that testing basket, we don't teach students how to learn. And with workforce looking the way it does, and knowing that the average graduate is going to change jobs 5 times before they're 35, which is what the latest research tells us, I think that one of the most important skills that teachers don't feel like they have permission to take time to do is to teach kids how to learn. And so I'll say one more thing about that student panel that stuck with me. I don't know about you, Patrick, but what stuck with me were the comments that the kids made. The 2 of the students had taken AP classes this year, and they said that when they got to the end of their, and they were in different high schools, different counties, when they got to the end of their AP classes, there was about 4 weeks of the semester left. And so they get to the end, they take the exam, and then they still have all this time left. And both of the students said they learned more about their AP Physics, and one was AP Chemistry, I believe. They learned more about that subject in those 3 to 4 weeks from what the teacher had come in and planned for, and which was collaborative, than they did that whole semester in an AP course. And so that was the information that they remember. And I think what always gives me pause about the way we do high school is that when we emphasize AP testing and other kinds of end of grade testing, you talk to any high school student and they will tell you that when that test is over, they forget that information. And so we have to ask ourselves, is what we're doing rigorous and relevant? And quite often the answer is no to the relevant piece, because of our focus on testing. So let's move on to the next slide. We did create a lot of assets to go along with this work. We didn't just unveil it and say, hey, teachers, here it is. We created toolkits and for counselors, for parents, for teachers. All of our assets are also in Spanish. And then we are also in the process of giving out to the field a playbook. And this link is also in your materials, board members. And the playbook includes a lot of background information, suggestions about how to spark conversations in school buildings, activities to promote each of the competencies. And we're launching 1 competency per month. And the first one was adaptability. And this playbook is a living document, so teachers can actually go in and give feedback and ask and give suggestions on how to improve it. There are also videos, graphics, everything in English and in Spanish. And so, yeah, the next slide has even more links for you to check out if you are so inclined. So, moving on to our district visits and an award winner, I had an incredible visit to Perquimans counties, who is one of our counties that saw significant gains in their youngest readers. And I got to see science of reading instruction in action in pre-K through second grade classrooms. And you'll see here a picture of something, it's a picture of me sitting next to a sound wall with a big smile on my face. Sound walls are what we will see replace something called word walls. So word walls in schools are typically words that teachers have asked students to memorize. And we know from the science of reading that asking students to memorize words does not lead to being a good reader who can sound out words and learn to read proficiently. And so sound walls encourage teachers and students to work together on sounds. And so you all got a little sample of that at our planning and work session with our mirrors and what it's like to sound out words when you don't know what those sounds are. And then on the bottom picture there is Perquimans County has an incredible high school fire academy that they have mainly funded through donations. And what you see here is a real, at first the team and I couldn't figure out if this was a rescue mission. They were practicing pulling someone from a fire. And the person on the ground, at first we thought was a dummy, and it turned out it was actually a real student in the fire. They were saving a fellow fireman. And so this, what we learned from this this visit was that after these teenagers take Fire Safety 1 and 2, when they turn 18, they can go and actually take the exam where you put out the fire. They are then certified and can get a job immediately. And while the starting salary was about $45,000 in their local area, remember Perquimans County is on the Virginia border. If they want to move to a bigger city, up to Richmond, they're looking at $60,000 to be a junior fireman. Next, we have been following since this was a glimmer in someone's eye, this new Wayne School of Technical Arts that is a partnership between Wayne County Public Schools and Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. It is the first and only North Carolina public school that is co-located on a military installation. And there's only a couple of schools across the country that can say this. This is just an incredible school that is really focused, next slide please, on STEM CTE offerings, coding, game art, drone technology, which there are just so many jobs in all of those areas. And they are really working to ensure that they're bridging the gap between what is happening in high school and what can happen after high school, so that all of their graduates are prepared for either to be employed, enlisted, or enrolled in higher education. And then the last visit was a trip to Greensboro for the Be Pro, Be Proud. This is an organization that has giant semi-trucks that have been kitted out with all kinds of hands-on activities for students to do that teach them about what it's like to work in the trades. And so this was an exhibition. There's an amazing video that you can just Google that shows the kids interacting with all of this equipment. And it is, again, looking at helping students to realize what opportunities are available to them. Because again, we do such a great job of helping kids find the path to higher education, but if that's not their path, they need to understand what is available to them the day after they graduate from high school, and this program helps do that. And then I had the pleasure of attending an award ceremony that was absolutely incredible in Alexander County at Alexander Central High School. So Harbor Freight gives a significant amount of money away every year across the nation to teachers who are advancing skilled trades education. And Josh Bowles, who teaches at Alexander Central High School, is a carpenter teacher. He was one of only 20 winners nationwide. He won $50,000, some of which he was able to keep and some of which went back into the school. But this teacher has really built the carpentry program at this high school at such that he and his students every year complete about 12 Habitat for Humanity houses, which is absolutely incredible. And so they do everything. They do the framing, they do the floors, they do the walls, they do the deck, the stairs, the handrails, they install the siding. So it's just an incredible, and the students, you know, you don't often, I go to award ceremonies a lot at high schools, and you don't often see excited students. Teenagers just kind of keep it to themselves. These kids were so happy for their teacher. His wife and his children were there, and it was a surprise. He had no idea. And Harbor Freight just, it was a class act all the way. Really, really exciting day. And then my last visit was, oh my gosh, this was, I don't know if you guys saw the pictures that the team posted from this, but I arrived at GE Massey Elementary School in Lincoln County and was treated to a hayride. All of the students, because it was farm to school month, were dressed like farmers. It was absolutely I love going to Title I schools where you can't tell it's a Title I school. This school was such a special school. The kids were, I mean, when first graders come up and greet you and tell you about themselves and offer to take you on a tour of their school, then they ushered me into the gymnasium where they were all sitting waiting for me to read them a book about a cow. And then we had a question and answer session which ranged from questions, everything from had I ever visited Canada to how did I decide I wanted to be the state superintendent. I mean, a second grader asked me that question. It was just an incredible visit. We ate in the cafeteria with the kids and got to see all kinds of farm to school engagement. And then I had the pleasure of also visiting Lincoln County School of Technology and Lincolnton High School, where I saw just incredible CTE programs. This is a picture of, they got a grant and they were able to purchase one of those dummies that actually you can assess blood pressure, pulse, it speaks and tells you what's wrong with it. You can do real CPR on it. And again, seeing that engagement with teenagers is just a thing of beauty. So really enjoyed that visit. And then we actually gathered in the library and had a community-wide event where we heard a lot of recommendations from folks that we normally don't get to hear from, like people who work in finance, people who work in IT, about the need for a different classification of employee, which is something that we will be bringing to the General Assembly as in terms of almost like a, well, there's no fiscal implication necessarily, but there would definitely be a change in statute to the way we classify employees. And then next, we of course celebrated our second annual AIM conference, and this was a nearly, well, it was a 4-day event where we had about 1,500 participants. More than 100 districts came to Raleigh for this event. It was absolutely incredible. And once again, thanks to the team at DPI and to Julie Pittman, we were able to make this a free event for teachers. We also were able to add a day on Saturday for that was also free for teachers, so that they could have a day that was just for classroom teachers, and that was a big success. We had lots of high energy and entertainment provided by our current Teachers of the Year. We had an incredible keynote from a Cabarrus County English language learner teacher who has one of the most amazing personal stories that I've ever heard as an immigrant from Guatemala, and who spoke to us about culture, identity, and the strength in her identity and culture, and what it looked like and felt like when she did not have that from her school experience, and then what it looked like when she did, and how she now provides that to her students. Then we had a student panel. We had that was, again, just very engaging, and it's always a treat to take students out of their classroom environment and put them in a different kind of space and listen to what they have to say. And then we had meetings with CAOs, technology leaders. We met with a lot of Restart leaders. We had listening sessions for the Pathways work that you all heard about yesterday, school performance grade redesign, as well as the portrait of a graduate. And again, just had an incredible last day with our teachers who were able to attend for free. And then there's one of the prizes that we gave away in the next slide, Maria, is we gave away 5 prizes to come and spend the day at DPI. So we're really surprised at the response that we got. But these, the bottom right are the 5 teachers who decided they want to come and spend a day at DPI and see what happens here. So we're really excited to provide that opportunity for them. And with that, Mr. Chair, my report is concluded. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Superintendent. Questions or comments from my colleagues? Well, we sure enjoyed your report and appreciate good work. I did have 2 things that came to mind. First, when you were going through the 7 skills, it's not only the connection to the schools of character item we had earlier, but to me, I saw a link between that and our whole child equity aspirations. You know, we often focus on inputs on the left. This focuses on the outcomes that would be great or demonstrated through our students by having those competencies. So a tight connection there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And then I appreciate your comments about my future in C, which I enjoyed serving on that board with you. I recall at the last board meeting there was some discussion about a number of different priorities, and one of those included the need for career plans for middle and high school students, which we all have a great interest in. And of course, the focus of that effort is to keep more of our students, particularly high school students, engaged longer in our schools in order to get the education that they need. And so that work may cause us to have to rethink or review some of our policies and approaches in order to better support that work, not only for my future goal, but for the benefit of our students. So thank you for bringing that up.
May I
Please.
piggyback? So that's a really good point, and we will be joining in with my future in the legislative long session to make a request for required career development plans beginning in middle school. Middle school students need to have, this is not to say that that a middle school student has to know what their plan is after high school, but they certainly need to be doing career exploration so they know what's available, what the options are besides being a doctor or a lawyer. There needs to be other conversations having, and those plans need to follow them to high school. And then we can also build on the need for more career development coordinators in our high schools. And then the other thing I would say that we will be supporting is, that has a fiscal impact, and that is we'll be joining the Department of Commerce in their request to continue to fund nccareers.org, which is, if you've not checked out that website, I would, if this is of interest to you, I suggest taking a look at that, nccareers.org.
Chair Davis, I do have a quick question.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes, the portrait of a graduate's fascinating work, it really is. My question has to do with, and Chair Davis, I'm happy that you made the connection to character education, because there is some overlap and ways to join those two concepts. I'm hoping that teachers don't feel the need to have to separate out, let's say, 20 minutes we're gonna talk about the importance of collaboration. Because collaboration should be an organic part of a lesson, or in give and take within a small group setting amongst students. Or take 20 minutes a day to do something around empathy. Because if it's that isolated, it becomes contrived. If it's organic, it becomes natural. So tell me how this is going to be presented to students.
To teachers? Well, I mean, so first of all, teachers are already doing a lot of these things. They are already embedding these things into their lessons. I look at this as in two ways. The first way is that this is showing teachers that the state values these things, even though we don't include these in high stakes testing. That's the first thing. The second thing is, while high stakes testing, end of grade testing, whatever you want to call it, is still, even if this board said, you know what, we don't want to do high stakes testing, the federal government still requires it. And so this is, to me, allows us to have early conversations about what would it look like if end of grade testing didn't look like bubble in. Because when I taught high school, I did not teach a tested subject. American literature is not a tested subject. But I had an end of grade test that my colleagues and I did so we could measure growth within our own PLC, and I did not give a bubble-in test. I gave a performance-based assessment. And so a performance-based assessment can be even more rigorous than a bubble-in test and actually give students a chance to demonstrate what they know and can do. And that is where, I had a rubric for collaboration where I would monitor my students as they were collaborating on activities, and that was a separate formative assessment than maybe a quiz. So I totally agree with you. This is not an add-on. This is something that should be infused. And I do believe that a lot of teachers are infusing this. I've had teachers say to me, "Thank you for recognizing that these things are important, because we're already doing these." And I certainly hope that a teacher wouldn't look at this and say, "We got to spend 20 minutes on critical thinking."
On empathy.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
But also,
Mr. Hall.
just piggyback, Madam Superintendent, I also, the screen slide said this, but these are I go back to soft skills, doable skills, but these are the skills that industry is saying.
That's right.
Industry is saying.
That's right.
That we want from the future worker. And I'm glad to see it. I mean, we talked about this, I know 20 years ago, how to answer a telephone, da. But this is what, you have to have this in order to work in the future.
That's right.
In jobs. You got to be able to collaborate. You got to adapt on a daily basis. Of course, you got to have empathy for your fellow worker and things along those lines. Our kids need this more than anything, if you ask me. Every child needs it. Anyway, thank you.
Dr. Ford.
I'm just going to agree with that, and I want to kind of harken back to when I first entered the classroom, because the language changes a lot of times, but it's the same stuff. I remember when everybody was talking about 21st century skills, and I remember thinking to myself, these are first century skills. I mean, the truth of the matter is, you're always going to need these things beyond just industry, just to be able to function as a human being, right, in a society, and be able to get along with your fellow person. These are things that are going to translate. I don't care what epoch, what era we're talking about, or what industry or space you find yourself in. And so, again, I feel like it's just a really good way to carry forward what is really generational knowledge, right? So, that's all.
Ms. White?
One last piggyback. These skills, coupled with the state's new emphasis on financial literacy, are the 1-2 punch to better educate our students about what it really takes to make and earn a living wage plus. Students at middle school need to understand all of the costs associated with being an independent household executive or in a married or blended family, because 6th, 7th, and 8th graders sometimes think they want to be X because they see the dollar sign, but they really need to better understand about what it takes to actually live, work, and play. And the work and play are tandem, because you can have work that covers your general expenses, and then there are all of the other costs associated with all of these skills. And so they need to understand that if they don't do what's needed on the front end, then they will most likely be dependent on many of the government resources that are available, trying to shore up the needs of their family. So they can become independent earners. They can become leaders in their household. But they've got to have that financial piece and the understanding of what it really takes to be financially independent in today's society.
Thank you. Other comments?
Well, one final point.
Dr. Lynn?
Is this, and we hear it in the media, and we hear it every day in our everyday lives. One of the things that we're hearing from employers is that they can't find individuals to fill positions. And that's a different type of, I suppose, durable skill that has to find its way in conversations in our schools.
Yes.
The will to work.
Well, your report's generated a lot of good discussion and obvious support for this. I do agree with the superintendent. I think this work's being done by our teachers all over the state today. Our teachers recognize that this has to be an integrated approach, because they're teaching the whole child in their classrooms and in their mindset. So it's great that this is a guide for our teachers and a statement of our commitment to our students for these. Personally, I also see it as not only the portrait of a graduate, but the portrait of a North Carolinian. It's a reminder to me that those are the traits I need to demonstrate each day in my interactions with others, particularly those who have a difference of opinion. And so this is a great statement of collective vision of values and commitment that we have to our state and to each other. So thank you for bringing that to us.
It's hard to pick only 7, but we did.
So I'm glad you mentioned the General Assembly in this conversation, because I was remiss at not thanking the General Assembly in our recognition session for their funding for our North Carolina Virtual Public School, because it was that funding that enabled the Virtual Public School to be able to get so many of those courses certified by Quality Matters. So I want to thank our partners in the General Assembly, and also want to thank them for support to one of our partners that we're going to hear from now, and that is the General Assembly provided funding for the North Carolina Education Corps. And at this time, I'll call on the Executive Director of the North Carolina Education Corps, Mr. John Paul Smith, to give us an issues update. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Superintendent Truitt, I'll ask you about your hayride some other time.
It's so fun.
Chair Davis, Vice Chair Duncan, Superintendent Truitt, members of the State Board, thank you for having us. I'm happy to provide an update on the North Carolina Education Corps. We benefit, as you know, from a bipartisan board of advisors co-chaired by Governor Martin and Governor Hunt, and have a very strong board of directors. We have the privilege of Superintendent Truitt serving on. It's chaired by Dr. Mike Ward. He apologizes that he can't be here today. He's listening in. He meant to be here, but he was with somebody who tested positive for COVID over the weekend. So for the sake of everybody's health, he decided to stay home. Today, what I'd like to do is just give you a brief update on North Carolina Education Corps and our progress since August, share a few highlights, and then also talk about a few outstanding issues that we're addressing. So this year, we are working with 29 PSUs across the state. You can see on this map that there is kind of blood orange color as well as a teal color. The teal color districts are our new districts this year. You can see that the majority of the districts that we're working with are from Tier 1 and Tier 2 counties in North Carolina. It's been very important to us that we have a statewide reach as we get going. And so we have representation from districts in each of the 8 DPI education regions across the state. And we're really excited about that. And the approach that we're taking is basically working with a sample set of districts across the state this year and next year, so we can really learn what does it take to connect tutors, high-dosage literacy tutors, to K-3 students in different types of districts across the state, and how can we improve our practices in supporting different types of districts and different types of students all across the state. So currently we have 378 tutors spread across the state in these 29 partners. We're on our way toward about 500 for this year. We have an additional 60 tutors that are being reviewed for final hiring currently, so there's some in the pipeline waiting to be hired. And then we have 3 districts that are starting in January, that will help us get closer to the goal of getting 500 tutors this year. In addition to the original districts that we're partnering with this year that you've seen, we also just added Chatham County Schools, which we're very excited about. Ready for the next slide. One of the things that we put in place this past spring and that we're implementing this fall with our partners is we have a playbook for our partners. And so this playbook helps to outline the tasks, the responsibilities, and the timeline in terms of rolling out a successful high-dosage tutoring program. You know, we've all heard about how much promise there is with high-dosage tutoring all across the country. The idea of getting behind high-dosage tutoring is easy. Actually implementing is very hard. And so what we're doing to make implementation easier with our partners is we've got this playbook that they're able to look at, we're able to talk through together so they can implement with fidelity to the high-dosage tutoring model in the district with more ease. This fall, we've been focused on recruiting, training, and coaching tutors. Like I said, our goal is to get up to 500 literacy tutors this year. Current demand, this has tapered back a little bit, but when I submitted these slides, demand was about 498. It's tapered back a little bit because there are a couple of districts that have decided we have all the tutors that we need for right this minute. We also need to be focused on several other things within our classrooms. So we've got about a request for about 480 tutors right now. In addition to that, we've recommended over 554 tutors for this cycle. And so far we're now at 378 tutors. Just as a reminder, we have several different tutor profiles. There's higher education students. This includes community college and four-year institution students. What's very interesting is that the majority of the tutors who are from higher ed are actually non-education majors. And we actually find this exciting because while a lot of the education majors have structured opportunities to get involved in schools and will continue to build on those, there are non-education majors who are becoming more interested in working in schools because they have this opportunity to serve as tutors. So that's very exciting for us. We also have a number of tutors that are parents and caregivers, so otherwise they may be involved in PTAs, and this is an opportunity for them, or other activities like PTA. This is another opportunity for them to get involved in schools in a really targeted way to support students, help build student confidence, as well as help drive their academic growth and success as early readers. In addition to that, we have a number of retirees, including retired teachers, who serve as tutors. And then a couple emerging groups is we have one district that's piloting out teacher cadets as a possible avenue for engaging more tutors. So Winston-Salem Forsyth is going to be seeing how teacher cadets can potentially get involved as high-dosage tutors, working with elementary school students. And then we also have a couple districts that have come to us and said, hey, in addition to recruiting new tutors and community members to serve as tutors within our schools, we would love it if you could provide some of the training that you offer to all tutors to our TAs, so that a portion of the TA's time can be allocated to targeted instructional support for early readers. So that's very exciting to us as well. It's worth mentioning as well, it's not on the slides, but over 50% of the tutors from last year who made a one-year commitment to serve as tutors for the last school year decided to re-up this year. So it's pretty good retention rates of tutors from year to year. So we're excited about that as well. Next slide. All of the tutors are receiving training and ongoing support. So they get about 13 hours of pre-service training. Some of it is online. It's asynchronous. It's aligned with Letters in the Science of Reading. We also provide in-service support and training to the tutors. And the majority of our staff members are actually coaches for the tutors. And the coaches are available kind of on demand from the tutors and provide regular structured opportunities for the tutors to receive coaching and ongoing support throughout the school year. So we're very excited about that. There's up to 60 hours of training and support available to tutors throughout the school year, which is pretty significant. Next slide. The tutors are matched to students by the schools. So it's school personnel within the elementary schools who look at M-class assessments and they see, okay, who are the best students to be matched to the tutors based on their assessment scores. So that's how the tutors are matched to the students. That's really handled at the local school level. And then one thing that we're doing this year is to ensure that there's fidelity to this high dosage model is we've partnered with an ed tech company called Latera Education to develop a tutoring log. So each individual tutoring session that any tutor does is logged. And in that log, the tutor identifies the students that they worked with, they identify how many students they worked with, they identify the skills that they worked on with that students, skills within phonological awareness and phonics, and they also identify, there's a feedback box where they can share, here's what's working really well with these students, here's where we need to focus a little bit more attention, here's where I feel like the training that I received prepared me to work effectively with these students, and here's where I'd like a little bit more coaching and support to continue to get better. So it's a continuous improvement tool as well as a data collection tool so that our program evaluators at NC State, the Friday Institute, and Duke Social Science Research Institute can look back to actually measure how effective is the tutoring with the students, what can we learn, and we continue to get better and better with our effectiveness. Next slide. Just a quick reminder, when folks talk about high dosage tutoring, they sort of follow the rule of threes. So high dosage tutoring, in our case, is all about at least 3 interactions per week between the tutors and the students. This is usually like Monday, Wednesday, Friday type connection, lasting at least 30 minutes per session with a maximum student to tutor ratio of 3-to-1. So sometimes it's 1-to-1, sometimes it's 2-to-1, sometimes it's 3-to-1, but that really kind of small group support, intensive support for the students is what helps make sure that they're growing at the pace that we really would like to see them grow. And then another important element is that the tutors that we are connecting to the students in partnership with our districts, they become employees of the districts. So the districts are the ones who hire and monitor the tutors as their own employees, and they're employed throughout the school year. So this is not kind of flash in the pan, I'm just going to show up one Saturday and tutor and never be seen again type tutoring. There's a consistent relationship that's built between the tutors and the students that allows the tutors to really build a strong partnership with the child. And focus on some of the social emotional learning in addition to growing them successfully as readers. So that's really important, the consistency of the tutor and student relationship. And then the monitoring, which I just described with the tutoring log, is very important too, in addition to the coaching that the tutors get. So that's just a quick reminder of high dosage tutoring. Just a couple highlights. We really think it's a big deal that that we're working with Latera Education on the tutor log. There are a lot of tutoring programs out there that don't focus as rigorously on data collection and ensuring that there is fidelity to the high dosage tutoring model. We think that that's really important. Evaluation and continual learning is really important to us. So we're excited about that. We're also excited that we're able to get out into the field more this year, including going to the AIM conference. Appreciate Julie Pittman and Jill Darrow and the rest of the team's support from DPI on being involved with that. The North Carolina School Board Association meeting, had fun sitting next to Mr. Hall at lunch one day on that. Had a great presentation with school board members, had unprompted, unsolicited audience members in our session where a school board member from Cumberland County Schools as well as Stanley County Schools were openly advocating to school board members from other counties and other school districts to get involved with North Carolina Education Corps and partner with us next year. So that was exciting. And then we also presented at the NC Papa conference. We're getting very positive reviews from our PSU partners as well as parents and educators within the classroom. Very excited about that. Next slide. This is just a little bit more information on the tutoring session log. If anybody here or online is interested in learning more about the log or even seeing a little video demonstration of what it actually looks like, this offers them the availability to do that. Next slide. Outstanding issues and opportunities. There is no doubt that the student need far exceeds the number and types of tutors that we have. We've all seen the NAEP scores. We know that reading and math scores are way below what we want them to be, lower than they have been in years. And high dosage tutoring is one intervention that can help to accelerate learning. So we're very excited about the promise of high dosage tutoring. We feel like, in contrast, I've shared this before, in contrast to the state of Tennessee, which has invested $200 million overnight in high dosage tutoring, we're taking a more deliberate approach in North Carolina. We need your help to continue to grow our reach within North Carolina, but we benefit from the General Assembly and private funders basically supporting a big pilot. So in contrast to the state of Tennessee, which is a big bet, we're a big pilot. It's important that we really figure out, how do we do this well? How do we work with the sample set of districts to figure out how we can implement high dosage tutoring well in different types of districts over the long run? But there's no doubt that the need right now far exceeds what we're able to do in terms of connecting high dosage tutors to all students who are below grade level reading proficiency and math proficiency. That would be one other space that we could get into with additional support. Other challenges are related to implementation. I don't think this would surprise anybody, but implementation is really hard. We're doing everything that we can with the playbook and with conversations that we're having with our school partners to ensure implementation continues to get better and better. We're learning a ton. We know that some of the challenges revolve around the timelines. So, for example, we have 378 tutors in the field right now. Part of the major reason that we don't have more in the field right now is just the time to hire issues with HR departments within different school districts being swamped trying to fill classroom teacher positions and school bus driver positions and cafeteria worker positions, and it's completely understandable. But that holds back our ability to work with them to deploy tutors into more classrooms faster. And then related is just the staffing issues that the school districts have in terms of not having enough staff within HR departments and elsewhere to be able to implement faster in partnership with us. So those are a couple of challenges that we have, but big opportunities there to continue to work with our partners to improve implementation. One thing that's going to help with that is additional funding for our work. And we're excited to share that right before Thanksgiving, the Goodnight Educational Foundation and the C.D. Spangler Foundations tripled their initial investments in our work, which is going to build some strong momentum with additional private funders. And then we'll also be in conversation with the General Assembly about providing ongoing funding so that we can reach more students faster. And then we're also, like I said, we're excited about the data collection that we're doing. The Friday Institute and Duke Social Science Research Institute, as you know, have been able to do early qualitative evaluation, and they'll be doing quantitative evaluation as soon as they can get more numbers and more data to be able to do that. So more quantitative evaluation will likely come out in the spring. Thanks so much for this opportunity to provide an update. Happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Questions on North Carolina Education Corps? Superintendent.
John Paul, thank you so much for the detailed presentation. Do you have a sense yet of when you're going to move into the math space? Because I think that was part of the original calculus, of the original proposition of the value add of NCM.
Yeah, that is, we'd like to do that as soon as we can, and as soon as we have demand for math tutors.
Yes.
From the districts, and we don't have the resources that we need to be able to pilot that out effectively. So what we're trying to do right now is make sure that we can nail the reading tutoring, the literacy tutoring, and then some of the initial funds that we'll be able to get hopefully will enable us to pilot out math tutoring as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for that response.
Ms. White.
From personal experience working with tutoring students in need in the community, one of the challenges faced with math in particular is that some of our retired citizens who have been non-educators, who have the desire to serve, have not been trained on the new math curriculum. And so what they might see on worksheets or for homework looks vastly different. And so I just want to make folks aware that significant training would need to be done, particularly for our second half folks who might have the desire to help, but things are very, very different. Very different.
Yeah. And there are good models to look at out there around math tutoring. Hart Math Tutoring does a good job in Charlotte. We are learning from them. We're learning from other reading tutoring partners across the state. And I think there's a big opportunity to potentially pull together a group of different tutoring providers, some that provide literacy tutoring, some that provide math tutoring, to put our heads together and figure out how can we create more coverage and support for students across the state faster. So I'm hoping that early in this coming year we're able to spend a little bit more time on that as well, and not only think about how can North Carolina Education Corps, which of course we want to do, create opportunities for more tutors to work with students through NC Education Corps, but also how can we work with other partners across the state who've been doing good work for a long time to collectively figure out how to reach more students faster.
Ms. Camden.
So you referred to an increase in funding from a couple of foundations I think that you've been working with. Are there additional funding needs? I mean, what are your funding needs?
Yeah, so currently we have the ESSER funds, the $13.5 million appropriation from the General Assembly, and we are partly raising the private dollars to be able to unlock all of those funds. Make sure we don't, make sure we can use every penny of the federal dollars that are being run through the state for high dosage tutoring. We need additional dollars to be able to reach more students faster. So that could look a variety of different ways. That could mean working with more districts across the state. So there's geographic growth that we need more money for. There's also the topical growth. If we are going to get into math, that's going to require more resources. And then there's also, some of the demand that we've heard from the districts is not only can you expand the K-3 literacy tutoring where the tutors are really focused on supporting students as they build their phonological awareness and phonics skills, but also can you expand your training so that the tutors can provide a full set of foundational literacy support to K-5 students or even K-8 students. And so we need more money to be able to expand our services both topically as well as geographically.
Is there going to be a request of the General Assembly in the next couple of years, or do you want to answer that question?
We are talking about that, yeah. So we'll be talking with the General Assembly this coming long session about that.
I think that's something that we could consider supporting perhaps as well. I mean, we've been very supportive of the work that you've done up to this point, and certainly there's lots of evidence to show that we need to continue.
We'd appreciate that.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Smith, could you say more about what you mean by unlocking the ESSER funds?
Yes. So the contract that we have with DPI is based on a reimbursement model, and so in order to ramp up our investments and expand our reach, we have to be able to do that at least a month in advance of then drawing down on a reimbursement basis the ESSER dollars from DPI, and so we need to have a cash cushion to be able to make the investments early on before we ask for the reimbursement. So does that answer your question?
Yes, I believe so. Any other questions? Mr. Smith, thank you to you and your education core team. You're a valuable part of the growing education system in North Carolina, and we appreciate your contributions to our students.
Thank you, Chair Davis.
Thank you. Team will now move to our reports from our committee discussions yesterday, and I'll remind our leaders to keep our reports succinct and concise. So we'll begin with student learning and achievement, led by Ms. Camdens. Ms. Camdens, you're off.
Thank you, Chair Davis.
You bet.
So I share the responsibility for this Student Learning and Achievement Committee with my colleague, Dr. Olivia Oxendine. We had several items of new business that we discussed yesterday. The first was the K-12 Science and Healthful Living Standards update. We heard a detailed description of the process and recommendations of the Science Data Review Committee, and then understood that then let me go back there. We heard about the process and the recommendations that the Science Data Review Committee made to the standards writing team, which took those recommendations and developed a first draft of the proposed K-12 science standards. That draft has been released across the state for feedback via surveys, and that feedback is now being gathered and will be analyzed by the Office of Learning Recovery. Working alongside both the Data Review Committee and the Standards Writing Team were the Extended Content Standards Writing Team, and this is the first time that has happened, that the two groups are working in concert. And we heard clearly yesterday what a benefit that was to the work of both. The Extended Content Standards Writing Team also has the first draft on the science standards and are surveying stakeholders. Healthful Living, Data Review Committee, and Standards Writing Team members have been selected, and they are beginning the orientation process with work sessions coming quickly thereafter. We heard a digital teaching and learning progress update in which we reviewed the Department of Public Instruction digital learning progress rubric ratings. Basically, this is internal feedback within the department across a variety of divisions who do this work. And the progress covers, this report and the rubrics cover 5 broad areas that are part of our digital teaching and learning plan. Leadership and vision, human capacity, curriculum, instruction and assessment, data privacy and cybersecurity, and technology infrastructures and devices. On a scale ranging from developing to distinguished, all ratings were either developing or proficient, which shows progress from where this started not long ago. And so this was impressive progress in a short period of time, particularly in digital content and resources and cybersecurity. The work continues to move each of these objectives forward with the aim of, I am sure, having check marks in all of the distinguished boxes, but we look forward to next year when I'm sure we will see a great deal of progress in these areas. And finally, we had an update on North Carolina school performance grades redesign. One of the goals of Operation Polaris is the development of a multi-measure model of student success and school performance. The development process, this development process towards this goal began in September when a redesigned advisory group convened. The group is made up of a variety of stakeholders from across North Carolina and has met monthly since September, starting with a full-day meeting here at DPI. The aim is to have a set of policy recommendations by January or February. Advisory group members have gathered feedback on possible indicators through peer conversations, an Ed&C survey that had an incredible 19,000 respondents across a variety of groups, including parents, and then meetings with various stakeholder groups across the state. And right now, there are a large number of academic and school quality indicators being considered, and those will be honed down to a smaller number. I think we have 14 right now. And there also is an intention to categorize those indicators by elementary, middle, and high school, which has not been the case before. And also the possibility of having some of those indicators be required and some of them optional. Our one action item is SLA 1, which is a report to the General Assembly broadening successful participation in advanced courses. This required report relates directly to the work of broadening course enrollment and exam participation in college-level advanced courses across our public schools. It reviews the efforts of the North Carolina Advanced Placement Partnership, which is led by the College Board, in support of the work, and includes data on advanced course enrollment and student exam performance, lots of growth and increases in critical groups that we particularly have been focused on. So that was really good news and good information that we're passing along to the General Assembly. And finally, we have a consent item, which is SLA 2, also a report to the General Assembly on the implementation of the arts education graduation requirement. Beginning with this year's 6th graders, an arts education credit is required for graduation in North Carolina, and the report outlines the work that DPI is doing to support this requirement. And that is the end of my committee report, Chair Davis.
Questions or comments for Ms. Campbell? Hearing none, we'll turn to the Education, Innovation, and Charter Schools Committee. And before I turn to Ms. White, please note for the record that Lieutenant Governor Robinson recuses himself from EICS 2 concerning the application from ALA Monroe. Ms. White.
Thank you so much, Chair Davis. Good morning, everyone. I'm Amy White. I'm the Chair of the Education, Innovation, and Charter School Committee, along with Ms. Jill Kamnitz. We had a great discussion yesterday. Our first item of new business was the renewal school district in Rowan-Salisbury. It's the state's only renewal school district, and they are required by state law to give an annual report. We were really thrilled to have Dr. Kelly Withers with us yesterday. She reported that in the past several months, or actually in the last year and a half, there have been 5 different superintendents. And we were really excited to see her energy and enthusiasm as she reported on the good work that's being done in that district. Data, of course, was not as reflective of the work that's being done simply because of COVID and the impact of COVID and the work done in the schools. Nevertheless, it was great to see that there is a commitment to making the renewal district and the flexibilities that have been afforded to that district as a result of being a renewal district work. And it's important to note that when asked what she needed as far as flexibility, I mean, as one of the flexibilities, her report was, or her reply was testing. That she just really needed additional flexibility for testing, and that ties right into what the superintendent has said earlier today about multiple metrics for determining student competencies in addition to just testing. The second item of new business was an update on a rules update for the charter school application and review process. Board members, if you'll remember, the state board took action to move the application date for new charter schools from the last Friday in July to the last Friday in April, and we did that last year. But when we did that, it prompted us to make a a rules revision. So we've been through that process, and we had an update from our legal team that said that that made it through the rules process and that change will take place. Ms. Ashley Vaquero let us know that she'll be communicating to the charter schools and any new applicants that new timeline is now in place. We had 2 items for action. EICS 1 was a report to the North Carolina General Assembly. We had the opportunity to discuss that at length through the leadership of Dr. Mia Murphy. We didn't have any additional questions or discussion about that yesterday, but so this is a request for that report to be sent over to the General Assembly. EICS 2 was the discussion of the 3 applications for accelerated charter schools in the state of North Carolina for this year. There were 3 schools that have been approved by the Charter School Advisory Board, and we had quite a discussion about several of those schools yesterday. And then finally, on consent, we had EICS 4, and we did not discuss that. The resumes for the new members to the Advisory Council for the North Carolina Virtual Public Schools are attached to your e-board materials, and they're before you on consent. And that does conclude our report.
Thank you, Ms. White. Would propose that for EICS 2, given the Lieutenant Governor's recusal, it might be appropriate for us to vote on ALA Monroe separate. Or if you're in agreement.
At the pleasure of the chair, yes.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion that we vote on the 3 separately?
And the logic is, what's your thoughts there?
Sure. Well, there's a possibility. I think ALA Monroe got selected because there's a possibility it could be a negative vote by 1 or more members, and it could be on ATA as well.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'll remind you that if Ms. Vaquero did remind the board yesterday that if any of the schools that are before us for approval in today's vote are not passed, then those schools will be taken back to Charter School Advisory Board for another round of review and then brought back to us in a subsequent month.
Okay. Good reminder. All right. Thank you, Ms. White. Next up is Healthy Responsible Students, led by Mr. Reginald Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, I'm Reginald Keenan, the chair of the HRS committee, along with Alan Duncan. And Mr. Chair, we'll have one item for action. We have to submit the school mental health policy report to the General Assembly pursuant to Senate Bill 476, and we ask that the reports be received so we can send it to the General Assembly.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Keenan? All right, thank you. Next is a report on the Pathways to Excellence for Teaching Professionals. A quick summary of that discussion is first the establishment of a special committee of myself and Ms. Kamnitz, working in concert with the superintendent, leading this item and coordinating work across all board committees and within DPI. We then had an opportunity to review the 10 blueprint items referred to us by Pepsi. The chair of Pepsi, Dr. Van Dempsey, joined us for that review and discussion of each of the 10 points. And then we had an opportunity to review and make modifications to a draft motion, which is on our action agenda for today. A couple of points that I think are relevant to note is the point was made a number of times about what's different about this approach and what are maybe the consequences of if certain points on the blueprint items, such as what qualifies someone to assure practice are not apparent. There was a great point made around clarifying what this initiative is about and the establishment of, for instance, FAQs, and another point around better defining what this initiative is not about. There was discussion about whether questions around whether a district could opt in or out, as well as the need for pilots to include a variety of size and characteristics of districts, small, rural, urban, large, so forth. Also that districts that may enter into the pilot need to be assured of do no harm. And then another point raised by our superintendent advisor, a series of points around the impacts on an individual school or district and how to plan for those. So that's a quick summary. Ms. Kamnitz, do you have anything to maybe add or adjust to that report? Okay. Any questions on that particular item? And the motion that's in your board materials is part of our action agenda. Okay. Next is the Educator Standards and Practice discussion led by Dr. Olivia Oxendine. Dr. Oxendine.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I am Olivia Oxendine. I chair this committee. Along with me in that leadership role is Ms. Amy White. We had two items yesterday. The first item is an action on first reading. It was presented by Dr. Tom Tomberlin. It pertains to GS 115C 311. Yesterday I had those digits all confused, so I'm correcting that today. This statute authorizes the State Board of Education to select school systems to implement the compensation model and advanced teaching model. Yesterday, Dr. Tomberlin presented the process for selecting those LEAs, applicants for that funding, and he also brought to us a recommendation. It was the third recommendation with the highest points. Those points were 81.5 was the average. We did have some discussion around using about $371,000 that would be remaining from this annual funding year after funding the recommended project. We talked about maybe funding 3 others, and we went back and forth on the advantages and disadvantages. We talked about the viability of those 3 models without full funding. We also brought up the fact that their scores were below the standard that was set for selecting, and so that led us to go in the direction that Dr. Tomberlin had presented, which was the third proposal. That proposal is going to be funded at a little bit over $1 million, $1,065,367. We will have $371,000 left. We have asked Dr. Tomberlin to come back next month with a recommendation on how to best utilize the $361,000. So that is coming to us in just a few minutes for a vote. The second item was presented by Mr. Carl Logan. He is asking us to approve a modification in the driver training policy 004. And this is a monumental revision. It's just basically adding to 004 the blended learning model for students that are in driver's training. This model was piloted for 2 years. That is a healthy, robust pilot. And the responses from teachers and other stakeholders who were involved in the pilot was very positive. High efficacy in the pilot, so this sounds very good. This is just going to be inserting the blended learning model in this policy. And the other point that I have not mentioned is the fact, and I think this could be pretty significant, is that this revision in the policy is going to highlight the difference between the standard approach, the blended approach for instruction of students in school, in driver's training, versus a policy that pertains to the eligibility of those individuals that are mentioned in a policy related to dropout prevention. So that makes a big distinction in those two policies. So that's coming to us momentarily, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Oxendine. And just to maybe clarify, ES&P 1, you said the recommendation is option 3, which is for one applicant to be approved.
That's correct.
Okay. Questions, comments for Dr. Oxendine? Okay, hearing none. Next is the Government Community Affairs discussion led by Mr. Wendell Hall. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along with Jill Kendis, chair of the Governmental Relations and Government and Community Relations Affairs Committee. Yesterday, we heard from Mr. Falkenberry for the ask for the General Assembly to fund certain concepts that we put in place. Because of the information that we got yesterday, this was an action item for today. Because of additional information we received yesterday, the time frame has been extended and gives us the opportunity at this point in time to talk a little bit more about the ask coming from this group and DPI. We did have some conversation, comments about whether or not there was enough dollars available in the ask to help some of these low-performing schools at an additional point in time. We did hear of the success of one of the models that's in place now in serving these low-performing schools. The ratio before COVID, looks like the ratio of low-performing schools decreased, and we thought that was a positive thing. So we want to investigate just whether or not we need to change or add or whatever our ask for next month. This item has been moved to next month for approval with more discussion to be held. That was really, and was a proof of concept. I think was one of the terms that we heard yesterday about a program that's being in place now from Dr. Martin, which that gives assistance to principals and administrators and teachers in those schools. With that being said, Mr. Chairman, Jill, do you have anything else that I can add to this report? And hearing that, we ask for your consideration for moving this adoption until January.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. This item will be removed from our action agenda, and placed on our agenda for January. Any questions or comments from Mr. Hall? The one additional point I might make that was made yesterday is that given that the board is a named defendant in a court order, that I think we have some responsibility to consider our responsibilities under the need for funding of the comprehensive plan. So that's an item of consideration that we'll continue to think about.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay. Last but certainly not least is the business operations discussion led by Vice Chair Duncan. Vice Chair Duncan.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Along with my colleague and friend Wendell Hall, we lead the Business Operations Committee. We have 4 items on action for first read and 1 item for action, as well as a consent item. But first, we started with new business report, which I think my sense was the board found very informative, where the state and federal funding updates were given for elementary and secondary school emergency relief, or ESSER 1 funds, and also the governor's emergency education relief, which are referred to as the GEAR funds frequently. We had several presenters, among whom were Dr. Mullenix, Dr. Townsend, Dr. Wren, Dr. Martin, and Alexis Schaus all contributed to the discussion, among others. It covered a wide range of areas, and I think it was a good report for the board to take a look at some things that appear to be working from the very first funds that we used, and then some things that that were probably not as effective or didn't work quite as well. So it was a learning experience, and it's important that we do that. And I want to thank our presenters, all of whom did an excellent job of providing information to the board on these items. On our actions for first read, the first item is BizOp 1, which is digital learning grants. And this is a approval to make a request for proposals. I think we're all familiar with it and have had several rounds of digital learning grants up until now, and this is a new round that was brought to us by Dr. McBride in place of Ms. Sype. And the methodology was set out, the timeline was provided, and the approach was provided in terms of how the scores would be done and how the selection process would work. And the request before us will be to approve that update so as to allow that process to proceed. BizOp 2 is the report on Portrait of a Graduate, which I will say was supplemented very nicely today. So Christy Van Auken gave us a report yesterday and made a request, and Superintendent Truitt gave a very nice supplement to the report today. The request, which is the item for us for Biz Op 2, would be to approve additional funding from ESSER 2 or 3 funds, following up on Phase 1 results to put in place a Phase 2 and a Phase 3 with respect to Portrait of a Graduate. The work here would be done through retention of vendor who's already been working on the Portrait of a Graduate effort, and it would be to essentially work through some implementation of what we've done this work in terms of what Portrait of a Graduate looks like. So now the intent here would be to utilize some of this funding for the implementation and for the benefits that can be received from Portrait of a Graduate work. And we're being asked to approve the use of those funds in this motion. Biz Op 3 was a presentation by Ms. Susan Brigman. This is the 2023 Summer Mini Grant for 21st Century Learners. Again, this is a process we've been through many times, both for summer mini grants and for full-time grants. Ms. Brigman explained the process about how we are going to proceed through the Office of Federal Programs, and provided the information for a timeline of how this would proceed and the relative amounts that would be available depending upon the size of the program and the number of hours a week that would be provided to students who are in the program. So our approval here, our request is to approve this process, which was the details given to us, so that can be proceeded on by federal grants area, and then come back to us once there's proposed grantees. And one thing that was heartening to several people, I think, is both in digital learning grants and in 21st century grants, a lot of time has been spent on trying to make available training and seminars and webinars for grant writing for districts that perhaps don't have the same experience or expertise and can't necessarily afford to have a grant writer as a full-time position, whereas some other districts can. And so real efforts have been made to give absolutely a fair opportunity for all districts to benefit from these important dollars. And we are being asked to improve that process. I'm going to skip to Biz Op 5 just momentarily, which is local school administrative unit teacher compensation miles and advanced teacher roles. The funding options, Tom Tomerlin reported on this, and really my report would be a duplicate of what Dr. Oxendine just provided, which is after a lot of discussion, recommendations from Dr. Tomerlin and from the department, it appears the approach that the board would like to proceed with is to make a grant of one of these administrative funding options to one district that had the highest score in the process, and award a little over $1 million, and that leaves about $360,000. So what we'd be asked to vote on in this item would be to approve that option, where that district would then be able to proceed with the funding. And know that Dr. Tomberlin and his group will come back to us at the January meeting with recommendations as to how to use the remaining $360,000, roughly, approximately, dollars. And there was some pretty good discussion from board members about how that might be thought through. Some ideas were really good but weren't feasible, and other ideas were really good, and I think the department will be working on those. So then back to Biz Op 4, this is an action item, and I think we all recall we had a pretty extensive discussion at our last meeting about North Carolina Public School personnel salary schedules and manual. This is a complete realignment and revision of the Class 5 pay ranges for the North Carolina Office of State Human Resources, and a very significant amount of work has been done on this. Sometimes we skip by these items because they're important, but we have a lot of confidence in the work that's being done by members of the staff. And we do have a lot of confidence in Jennifer Bennett presented this, and she and others have worked very hard on this. And this is an important and timely topic, because I think all of us have heard from districts where there's issues about compression of classified pay as a result of some of the recent pay raises. This does not fully resolve that issue by any stretch, but it's part of the long-term resolution of that issue. And I want to thank Ms. Bennett and others who worked very hard on something that it's a lot of pages of work, and it's not necessarily the most glamorous assignment anyone got this past month, but it's very well done, and so we're being asked to approve those revisions for policy. That then brings us to our consent item, very briefly. That's approval to use some additional North Carolina education lottery funds that have been approved for us to use to to support positions in DPI's Office of District Operations. As Dr. Lynn Harvey discussed briefly yesterday, it comes at a very good time when there appears to be a significant pickup around the state in construction, and these positions can be put to very good use in expediting or facilitating the movement forward of the plans for these schools. I think many of us who've worked locally have experienced times when there was a lot of building going on, and there were very significant holdups because of the volume, and the department was just overwhelmed with the amount of work they had to do. And here, this is gonna help. It's not perfect, but it's gonna help a lot to have these positions available to help facilitate this work. So then we reviewed the updates on contracts. One of them specifically, Dr. Wren provided some information about change in technology infrastructure for the Eastern School for the Blind, and the need to update that, which is in most respects become obsolete and minimum needed update. In response to the board question, we also have received the monthly budget report from Ms. Schaus. Unless there are any questions, that would complete our report.
I just have just a question about point of clarification. Is the remaining amount after we fund that one proposal, is that remaining amount 360 or 371? I said 371.
I used the approximation of 360, so I don't have that number right in front of me, but that's right at the number.
It's 371,051.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. One other slight modification is because of the way our system numbers these items, when we moved the discussion item to an action on first reading, that made BizOp 4 the local school administrative unit teacher compensation model, advanced teaching role item, and made BizOp 5 the public school personnel salary schedules and manual item.
And the most important thing to say there is those items, BizOp now 4 is in alignment with ES&P 1. So the board's not being asked to do anything other than come to the same conclusion from two different committees.
Yes.
Any questions on that?
Clear as mud.
No. No.
Clear to me.
Okay, just the numbering change from yesterday, the content.
Numbers we're voting on don't match on the agenda.
Updated and e-board matches.
Okay.
And when I call for the motion, it will match, or Dr. Petrie Martin will correct me, for sure. Any other questions? No? Okay, great. All right, we're gonna charge on, team. We're on the home stretch. So now that we have several items to vote on today, and board members will now vote on these actions from your reports. A thorough discussion and report was provided on each item, including any respective consent items. Reminder that any consent item is primarily not complex and may have come to the board for discussion in the prior month. I note also that we've seen these consent items for about a week. Further note that the Lieutenant Governor has recused himself from EICS 2 concerning ALA Monroe. At this time, I ask if there's a request to remove any additional items other than EICS 2 from the consent action or action on first read agendas. Seeing none, ask for a motion to approve the following: SLA 1 and 2, EICS 1 and 4, ES&P 1, which is a recommendation to approve one applicant, option 3, and ES&P 2. BizOp 1 through 6, noting that BizOp 4 is also to approve funding for one applicant, option 1. The motion also includes the North Carolina Pathways to Excellence for Teaching Professionals motion contained in our materials. And then the final element is the limited licensure and initial professional license request discussed in closed session. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Oxendine. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hall.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
may I ask a
Chair.
question? Did you say HRS 1?
I did not. So thank you. We'll add that to the motion. Good catch. Thank you, Mr. Keenan.
All right.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. White?
You also did not mention EICS 3, which is Aspire Trades, request to implement a weighted lottery.
Okay, then let's just start over. How about that?
Sounds
Thank you.
great.
Appreciate that. See, this is why it's a team sport. I also forgot some
Oh, I'm
minutes.
sorry. I'm sorry. EICS 3 is a discussion. My fault.
That's okay, I forgot it. Let's start over. I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve the following. The minutes for the planning and work session of November 1st and 2nd, and the official meeting of November 3rd, 2022. And then from your committee reports, SLA 1 and 2, EICS 1 and 4, HRS 1, ES&P 1, which the recommendation is for option 3, the one applicant, and ES&P 2, BizOp 1 through 6, noting that BizOp 4 is for one applicant, option 1 consistent with ES&P 1. The North Carolina Pathways to Excellence motion, the limited licensure and initial approval license request discussed and closed.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Blackburn, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Keenan. Any discussion on that motion? Dr. Petrie Martin.
Dr. Oxendine,
Yes.
Mrs. Camnitz,
Yes.
Mr. Keenan,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mr. Blackburn,
Yes.
Dr. Ford,
Yes.
Treasurer Falwell, Lieutenant Governor Robinson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes. Motion carries. We'll now proceed to EICS 2. The recommendation from the EICS committee is to approve each of these 3 accelerated applications, and we'll review and vote on each one individually. First is the American Leadership Academy, Monroe in Union County. Ms. White, any additional comments before, your motion is to approve it?
My motion is to approve it. I will say that while the treasurer is not here, he wanted to vote in the affirmative today.
He's on his way.
Okay?
I'm not sure how long it will take him to get here.
Do you have any timeline on that?
Do not.
Mr. Chair, just to give a couple more minutes in case a treasurer can get here, could we vote in reverse then and do the school in Asheville first, and the vote on the my brain's blank.
Yes,
Could
we can do that.
Operate it and just give him a few more minutes, or if the board would acquiesce, knowing that the treasurer does have a scheduled meeting every day on the same day that the state board meets, and his desire was to be here, but he didn't have access to the meeting through a link. I just beg the board's indulgence to have him have the opportunity to vote on these.
We'll vote in reverse order, starting with Mountain City, Legacy, and Monroe. Okay? So
Then I would move approval.
Okay, the motion is to approve the accelerated application for Mountain City Public Montessori in Buncombe County. Dr. Petrie, is there discussion? Any discussion?
Do you need a second?
Well, since it comes from the committee, it doesn't need a second. Dr. Petrie Martin?
Dr. Oxendine,
Yes.
Mrs. Camnitz,
Yes.
Mr. Keenan,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mr. Blackburn,
Yes.
Dr. Ford,
Yes.
Treasurer Falwell, Vice Chair Duncan,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes. Motion carries. Next up is the Legacy Classical Academy.
Can I ask
in-
you a point of order? Couldn't the lieutenant governor vote on that?
Oh, yes.
Vote on that one.
Yes.
Okay, Mark.
Good catch. Thank you. So Lieutenant Governor, your vote is? Yes. Okay,
Yes.
got it.
I got it.
Thank you. Next up is Legacy Classical Academy. And the motion from the committee is to approve the accelerated application for this school. Any discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to hear, we didn't really have a lot of discussions about that, but this one was highlighted as a possibility that there needed to be further discussion about. So were there any other areas of or questions that needed to be asked about Legacy?
Vice Chair?
My focus and comment was at the end, and in the interest of saving time, which maybe wasn't a good idea, but the contract has very similar provisions with respect to governance as the contract does with Charter One, and I think you noted appropriately that if it's not good for Charter One, it shouldn't be good for other entities either. It's one difference, and I think I said this yesterday, it's a 14%, not a 15% charge. But it also very explicitly, even more explicitly than Charter One's contract that you read, includes all federal funding to be at that same rate. And so, I both for the governance reasons that are set out in the contract and the 14%, and just the lack of clarity to me how federal funding could be appropriately part of the charge. That was my concerns in a nutshell.
And just to add to that argument, I would agree if that's the approach that we're going to take to charter schools, then we should be applying that same approach to all other contracts, not just charter schools, but all other contracts from outside vendors that would have that same margin and give that the same level of scrutiny. That we shouldn't just apply that. If that's the thought moving forward, then that same scrutiny should be applied to every contract that comes before the Department of Public Instruction for the use of state or federal funds. And I think that you will find very similar, if not even larger margins built into a lot of those contracts.
Especially with our higher education partners.
Our higher education partners, I believe, have 15% also built in.
And sometimes more.
Yeah, I'm not aware, I have not seen more if I did. And you know, Superintendent, I have objected to that as they come through my committee. It suggested that they
But we still approve.
have a renegotiation about that.
But
Which I
yet
will
they're still
reiterate.
approved. And so I'm again, just highlighting the point that it is a standard of doing business that are built into most, if not all, contracts.
And to be clear, well, first of all, it's not a standard built into business with which I think is in the best interest of kids. Just, that's my, whether it be higher institutions or otherwise, schools of higher institutions. But my larger point was, I think in the first point I said, was the contract raised governance questions in my mind. So, just to be clear.
Thank you, Mr.
And I may be the only one, but, and it likely am, but that's okay.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. White, remind us, if we approve this, obviously the schools move forward.
And they would have an opening in August of 2023. So accelerated, normal applications go through a 2-year process whereby the application is approved, the charter is allowed, and then that school has a 1-year ready to open process, and they work directly with the Office of Charter Schools in a number of different ways to provide consultation to make sure that they're ready to open. Accelerated applications are schools that have a previous track record and have the ability to pivot quickly and put boots on the ground, and usually have a facility identified and school leaders in place so that they're ready to roll and don't need the additional time to prepare and plan.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And in the event either of these are not approved at this stage, then they're referred back to CSAB, and then what happens?
Yes, sir. They would be again reviewed at the next Charter School Advisory Board meeting. The Charter School Advisory Board would make an additional recommendation, and it would be brought back to us for a final decision. That is in charter school law.
Okay. Any questions on that?
the treasurer has asked for an update on where we are. We're currently discussing Legacy Classical. We're voting on each one separately. Mountain City, we just voted on, so we're at Legacy, and we'll vote on American Leadership Academy. Thank you for being here.
Mountain City was approved. Everybody up to speak? Okay. Any other discussion?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
What will this going back and forth, Ms. White, what will that mean in terms of any delay in opening?
For accelerated applications, they're still held to the same standard. It's an accelerated application. It does put them a month behind. If they were to come back and be approved by the state board at a subsequent meeting, but they are still held accountable to open.
To that August 23?
In August of 2023. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Given that pending the vote, given that the concerns have been around the governance, perhaps we should look to our, if it is not approved, perhaps we should look to our general counsel to review these contracts, and that might provide a way to alleviate concerns or develop solutions, assuming they don't pass, so that we can try to figure out a resolution.
I would agree regardless how it comes out, some study on the contracts and language that would work would be beneficial to everyone, including the CSAP committee, which articulated some concerns about exactly what their role was with that, and that's a spot we ought to be in position to provide better clarification.
One of the, I would agree to that review, but one of the one of the disagreements here is what the North Carolina Charter School allows, and it does allow for an education management organization to provide large-scale supervision, as well as it allows for smaller boards and smaller nonprofits to begin a brand-new charter school. So the law does allow for the type of companies like Charter One or any other one to come in and run charter schools.
Chair Davis, I have another question.
Sure.
What you were just proposing or suggesting a minute ago, would that be an intervention between now and CSAP's meeting to expedite? We would still have to follow the law.
Oh,
to send
certainly.
it on back.
Yeah, I think work by general counsel reviewing these items could then help inform CSAP's work, as well as our own consideration.
I have a clarifying question then. What I'm hearing is that there is a philosophical disagreement about these contracts that is not grounded in the current law. So a review of our legal team on these contracts, it doesn't, unless I'm misunderstanding, and tell me if I am, a review of these contracts is not going to change anything, because we're talking about what's in law. If we want the law changed, then that's a separate issue, but you asking for a review in order to approve or deny this expedited opening seems irrelevant, given the fact that we're not talking about the law not being upheld. Is that fair?
Correct, and to be fair, I had a great interaction with the Charter School Advisory Board meeting, one who voted against one of these applications, and his vote was not because the contract wasn't an excellent contract, not that the application wasn't an excellent application, or that there was the ability of the organization to put forth a quality school model. It was that fundamental disagreement in a large organization running a charter school in North Carolina.
To further clarify, I've tried to be very carefully clear that I've not made an allegation that the contract is illegal, but that doesn't mean that we can't consider the government structure as part of what we do. But I do think clarity on what the contract looks like would benefit everyone. And I see no downside to that.
Any other discussion? Okay, then we'll move forward with Legacy Classical Academy. Dr. Petrie Martin.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes.
Mrs. Camnitz.
No.
Mr. Keenan.
No.
Mr. Hall.
No.
Dr. Tipton Rogers.
No.
Mrs. White.
Yes.
Mr. Blackburn.
Yes.
Dr. Ford.
No.
Treasurer Falwell.
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor, I think this is a recusal.
No, he can,
No.
No, this is
he's good
three.
on this one.
This is three, correct?
This is legacy,
Yeah,
not
yeah, no, this-
Monroe.
yes.
He can vote on this.
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan.
No.
Chair Davis.
No. So the motion fails 7-5. That will be referred back to CSAB. Next up is American Leadership Academy Monroe. The motion is to approve the accelerated application. This one, the Lieutenant Governor is recused from. Is there any discussion? Dr. Petrie Martin.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes.
Mrs. Camnitz.
No.
Mr. Keenan.
No.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers.
No.
Mrs. White.
Yes.
Mr. Blackburn.
Yes.
Dr. Ford.
No.
Treasurer Falwell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan.
No.
Chair Davis.
No. So that motion fails 6-5. So that one's also referred back to CSAB. Okay. That concludes our action items for this meeting. I want to thank everyone, particularly our DPI staff, colleagues, for their work. I hope you'll have a terrific holiday season, and now ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Hall. Second by the treasurer, Dr. Petrie Martin.
Dr. Oxendine.
Yes.
Mrs. Camnitz.
Yes.
Mr. Keenan.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers.
Yes.
Mrs. White.
Ms. White?
Right.
Trying to adjourn.
Yes.
Mr. Blackburn.
Yes.
Dr. Ford. Treasurer Falwell.
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor Robinson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan.
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes. We're adjourned.